To start with a background. I think of America as having three segments of history. Everything up to 1860, everything. From 1860 to 1940, and then from 1940 to current. I break it up that way because everything prior to 1860 is, I consider, the British side of history, even though it's ultimately all British. But from 1860 to 1940 is where everything changed. That's where the Constitution disappeared. That's where a new government was formed. And ultimately then in the 1940s, that new government was handed over to the IMF through the Bretton Woods Agreement, and then every United States citizen became a citizen of the United Nations. So if you guys are still United States citizens, you're actually citizens of the United Nations, which is probably why there's so much activity coming out of the United Nations, and that's why they write so much of the rule book nowadays. So here we go. Can you see this okay? 1861, the 7 southern states had it. They were done. They were done being pushed around by basically the international bankers. And they decided to leave the Union. And they had every right to do that because they were sovereign individual nation states. They had the right to leave or break the contract because that's what the Constitution was. They call it a compact, but ultimately it was just a contract between the states. So I'll just read this. This is out of my notes. You guys, most of you don't have, but it says when the southern states walked out of Congress on March 27, 1861, the quorum to conduct business under the Constitution was lost. The only votes that Congress could lawfully take under parliamentary law were those to set the time to reconvene, to take a vote to get a quorum, and to vote to adjourn and set a date, time, and place to reconvene in a later date or a later time. But instead, Congress abandoned the House and the Senate without setting a date, and that's called sine die. Under the parliamentary law of Congress, Congress actually ceased to exist as a deliberative body, a lawful deliberative body. And in fact, they no longer even had the ability to declare war. So in 1861, on March 27th, Congress disappeared. The lawful Congress disappeared. So that's what lays the groundwork for what we're about to just cover over the next maybe hour or so, because I will try to get into the depth of the 14th Amendment. A little less than a month later, a man that was claiming to be president of the United States, Abraham Lincoln, issued Executive Order 1. Why do I say claiming to be president? Because he was no longer president. Because when the contract called the Constitution ceased to exist, so did the United States. The United States only existed because of that contract, because of the Constitution. So Abraham Lincoln issues Executive Order 1. And what he did was he established a martial rule, basically, over the federal territories. Martial rule. Not martial law, but martial rule. And here's what I try to explain. This was the first executive order ever issued. And sadly, think about an executive order. For those of you that work in the corporate world, if you have a secretary, it is as simple as this. The president or CEO of the company issues an order to go after a Subway sandwich, a cup of coffee. He asks his secretary to go refill his cup of coffee. That's an executive order. Not, I'm going to create a military dictatorship. That's not an executive order, but that's what happened. They found a way to actually take back control of all territories, or at least the federal territories. And that's what Abraham Lincoln did on April 15th. Now, everybody knows what April 15th is today. Yeah. It's the day you guys all pay your taxes. Why? No, that's just a rhetorical question. So 1861, first executive order ever issued. 1862, the same unlawful Congress redefines the word, a word that we use every day, person. Redefine it from a word that we use in our regular daily vernacular to a legal term, meaning a fictional entity. So when you walk into a courtroom today, if they use the word person, they're not talking about you, the flesh and blood man, or the flesh and blood woman. They're talking about a fictional characterization that is attached to you. And that's how they got you into court to begin with. So they redefine the word person, a word that we use every day, into a fictional characterization. And remember this, that which you create, you control. So, I mean, there's a lot of folks, a lot of patriots out there that talk about being a sovereign. See, the way I look at it is if God exists, and I try to cross all boundaries here. If God exists, then He creates you, man or woman. Sorry, I know my boundaries. And there's nothing between the two. That's sovereignty. And that which you create, you control. So I mean, ultimately, we're still part of God's world. But see, in 1862, the state created the person. And that which they created, they control. And you'll see how this all attaches as we go. So in 1862, they created the person. 1863, Abraham Lincoln issues the Lieber Code, General Orders 100. What is that? Well, go home, Google it, and then you'll start reading about your government. The General Orders 100, the Lieber Code, is the government we're living under. Remember, the Constitution disappeared in 1861. But in 1863, they needed some way to govern the territories, the federal territories. And they did that through General Orders 100. Go home, look up the Lieber Code, that's L-E-I-B-E-R, the Lieber Code, or General Orders 100. Look it up, and you will see your government. You'll actually read it and go, wow, you know what, there's more things going on in here than I thought. It's a military government. Remember this, the dictatorship was established in 1861 because there was no true Congress and there was no president. Also in 1863, the Supreme Court was abolished. Why would they need a Supreme Court when there was no Constitution? The Article 3 judiciary didn't exist anymore, so why should they pretend they need the Supreme Court? They reestablished a new Supreme Court in the District of Columbia that they controlled completely. But it's not the same Supreme Court. I have all the documents, so when you guys are ready, or actually when you're capable of understanding, and no disrespect, but this is a tough one. When you see the difference between this and that Supreme Court, they're splitting hairs. They're splitting hairs. But the one was abolished, and it's actually right there in their words. Also, they established the USPS, the U.S. Postal Service. The U.S. Postal Service. What was that for? That was so they could keep track of the federal persons down the road. No pun intended. 1864. They redefined the word state. So, for how many of you folks in this room right now are in Illinois? Yeah, see, most of you understand that if you raise your hand, I'm going to get after you. Because you've been around this too long. Why? Because the state is not Illinois. As of 1864, when they redefined state, they redefined it to mean in their world, in their law society, it means the District of Columbia. So when you hear the word state out there anywhere, even when a cop is talking about the state, he's not talking about Illinois. He's talking about the District of Columbia. In their legal world, the state means the District of Columbia. In 1865, the second 13th Amendment was created. Why? Because the first 13th Amendment was the amendment that didn't allow attorneys to hold office. you couldn't have a title of nobility with the original 13th Amendment. That was still part of the original organic Constitution. What did they replace it with? In 1865, the one that everybody talks about being so good. It was the freeing of the slaves. That's what they say. No, that's not what happened. The 13th Amendment was not about freeing slaves. It was about creating a government where voluntary servitude was a possibility. 1868, which is what I'm going to really try to cover today, is the 14th Amendment. What happened with the 14th Amendment? Well, they now incorporate the word person, the new legal term person. What is the 14th Amendment? What's the very first line of the 14th Amendment? All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. Who's they? The person. I mean, isn't it obvious? Where do all persons reside? Well, in the state that they're created in. What state is that? Well, as of 1864, it was the District of Columbia. So when you claim citizenship, what are you claiming? Personhood status. And where does that person reside? The federal territory known as the District of Columbia. So if you think you're sitting here, when a cop busts through that door, they're going to beg to differ. They're going to say you're in the District of Columbia. Because you've claimed U.S. citizenship, therefore you're under the rule of the District of Columbia. So that's the very first sentence of the 14th Amendment. And I'm going to get into the rest of it in a little bit. In 1870, the 15th Amendment was passed. What amendment is that? That's the amendment for the legal right to vote. Legal right. Not lawful. Legal right to vote. What did they do? They made it so you had to register to vote to participate in their legal system. Did you need to register prior to that? No. You actually had a right to participate. Now you had to register. What does register mean? What does the root word mean? To registrate. You're actually giving over ownership of something. You're giving over ownership of what? Your power of attorney. Your legal rights. The moment you register to vote, you're giving over your power of attorney, your legal rights. By proxy now, they get a vote in your stead. And you have no say. It doesn't even matter what party is in power. Well, they're all the same party. But it doesn't matter because you've given it away out of ignorance, not out of, foolishness or anything, but you didn't know. In fact, what did they say? Voting is a privilege. It is. It's not a right. It's a privilege in their world. And they've made it a privilege. And you know what? What can you do with a privilege that you can't do with a right? Take it away. Also in 1870, something really important happened. The Department of Justice was created. Why? Because there was no Article III judiciary. They needed some semblance of law. But it says Department of Justice. Under what does the Department of Justice fall? The executive. The executive branch. It's a department under the executive branch. So who's in control of the legal system? The president. The dictator. This is pretty sad stuff. That was in 1870. And ultimately, who's the top law enforcement officer in their system? The Attorney General? The Attorney General, right? In the Department of Justice?
Yeah.
Okay. So it doesn't have anything to do with the Supreme Court or anything like that? No, it's the Attorney General. I'm going to go off track here for a minute because I want to read something so everybody understands who the Attorney General is. But and I'm going to close with this real quick, is that in 1871 then, a new private municipal corporation was created under the Organic Act. And this new private municipal corporation had a charter, a document of incorporation. And that was called the Constitution of the United States of America. It's a private corporate charter. And that their Constitution, the one they created on February 21st, by the way, about 3 weeks ago, didn't they read a Constitution into the record? Here's what they do. Every 20 years, like every other corporation, but every 20 years they have to read in the corporate charter to renew it. And they've been doing it every 20 years since 1871. And everybody's thinking that they're just being patriots. No, they're not. They're just taking care of business. So they renewed this private corporate charter, and all us idiots out there are out there rah-rah. Because we're complete morons. We're actually participating in our own slavery. This was not the Constitution. This is not the Article 6 Constitution that says this Constitution, the one that was written in 1789. It was the Constitution that was assembled and put together in 1871. It was not this Constitution that they speak of in Article 6 of the Constitution, the original Constitution. It's a Constitution that resembles this Constitution. When they said this Constitution in Article 6, what are they saying? They're saying this moment in time, this Constitution. It's not a living document. It is very specific. The one they have now is living, because they can change it up and do whatever they want. And very soon they will. With the con, they're probably going to assemble. And then you're going to see a new Constitution altogether, which they've been working on since 1964. So that's the timeline. And I want to focus today on the whole concept of citizenship and why you don't have any rights at all. For those of you that have never seen this before, thank you. This was one of the greatest shocks of my life, truly. A buddy of mine down in central Illinois, we were on the phone just because, you know, when you know some of this ugly stuff, there's very few people to talk to. And we were talking about the Attorney General, the fact that the Attorney Generals are actually the ones that run the Department of Justice, both in the individual state ofs, like state of Illinois, state of Wisconsin, and all that, and also at the highest level, the Attorney General that oversees all of the Department of Justice. This is, you can go home, and in fact I would advise you to do this, go home and look up the Illinois Attorney General. Lisa Madigan's, go to her website today.
History of.
And go off to the side, there's the history of the Office of Illinois Attorney General. Get this document, download it as fast as possible. If you can, try to take a picture of the entire website so people know that it actually existed before they take it down. This is at her website. In fact, it's written by Sean W. Denny, former senior counsel to the Attorney General. The reason I'm prefacing all this is because you got to know that this isn't just something at the website. It's very specific. This, my friends, if this doesn't change your attitude about what you believe, nothing will. In fact, if you don't care about what I'm about to say, I'm asking you to leave. That's how important this is. The powers generally understood to belong to the Attorney General at common law have been summarized as follows. It's about halfway through. The very first sentence. To prosecute all actions necessary for the protection and defense of the property and revenues of the Crown. Who's the Attorney General working for? The Crown Temple. The Crown. And now let me explain, all you super hardcore patriots that are out there waving the flag saying, "We the people." Representation of the Crown is translated in our system to representation of the people. So the folks that are out there waving their flags that think they're the people, they're not. They're U.S. citizens, thus making them substratus humanoids called persons. Just fictional characterizations. They are not the people. The people are those in D.C. protecting the property of the Crown. That's the Crown Temple. Their job has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with your freedom. It has nothing to do with anything you ever thought of. It's outside of politics. It's all about property. And whose property are you? As a person, a U.S. citizen, you're the Crown's property. This is one giant slave plantation. And we have never been told the truth. Go to the website, see if you're true. As you continue to read through here, it'll make you sick to your stomach. This is at her website. I'll read it. I'll read the first paragraph first. The governmental and judicial systems within the United States of America at both federal and local levels is owned by the Crown, which is a private foreign power. It says before jumping to conclusions about the Queen of England and the royal families of Britain owning the USA, this is a different Crown and is fully exposed and explained below. It's the Knights Templar. It's the City of London banking institution. That's who it is. So go to the Attorney General website. You need to see this for yourself to believe it. I got goosebumps right now thinking about this. It says, did you have an opportunity to read that yet? And I have it up on my page on the computer and looking at it going, no, because I had 50 irons in the fire. He called me back later that day. He says, you need to read that now. And he started reading those lines to me, and it says, the attorney generals of every state, by the way, this season of treason I'm talking about from 1861 to 1871, the initial office of Attorney General in Illinois, established 1818 in Kaskaskia, was disassembled in 1867. They reformed it in the 1870 new constitution for the state of Illinois. So a new Attorney General office was created, which worked directly for the Crown since 1870. We've been bamboozled, folks. Completely. Here is the 1789 Constitution. It was a contract. It created, a byproduct of this was the legislature, the executive, and the judicial branch. This is Article 1 of the Constitution, Article 2 of the Constitution, and Article 3 of the Constitution. That is the United States. That's what the United States was when it was created. It also, what else does it say? To form a more perfect union. So the 13 colonies or the 13 states that were bound by this became a union of states. Why? So commerce could flow easier across the borders, the boundaries. I mean, in our case, even though we weren't there back then, it's like the border between France and Germany. There's borders that have to be worked through. Well, Illinois and Indiana were no different than Germany and France. They were independent, sovereign nation states. That's why they had a union of states tied together through this contract. Think of this as a barbed wire fence. I say this every week because I want people to understand that these are two separate sides that I'm about to deal with. I just told you that in 1861, when the 7 southern states adjourned, or actually walked out sine die, everything we knew disappeared. Everything we were told about the Constitution disappeared. So this is now gone. But remember, they also pretended this was still intact. There was no internet. There was no. I mean, a lot of folks were not able to read, and only the educated truly had the ability to understand what was going on. And most of the think about 1861. Most of us don't really know what life was like back then. I wish I was living back there now. But 1861, there was a lot of stuff out west where people were just lost out in the territories. They didn't know what was going on the East Coast. So 1861, the Constitution, the contract known as the Constitution disappeared. Thus, the Union of States disappeared. But they pretended throughout the 1860s that this thing still existed. They had to. In fact, what happened in 1861? Lincoln he issued Executive Order 1 to do what? Try to maintain the federal territories. Try to keep this thing together is what the excuse was. He got his marching orders from the international banks. So that's not the motive. The motive was, the ultimate prize was the sovereignty of the states. That's what the United States was after. The United States, the Civil War was not a war between the North and the South. It was between the North and the South and the District of Columbia. The District of Columbia won. It grabbed up the sovereignty of every state after that. That's what the 14th Amendment is all about. So here we go. In 1870, remember, you got this artificial legislature still moving forward as if it still existed. And it did what? It created the District of Columbia through the Organic Act. How many people know the real name of the District of Columbia? Most of you guys actually know it, but you're afraid now. You should be. It's the state of New Columbia. And within the state of New Columbia, there is a city called the City of Columbia. No different than Vatican City, or the City of London. Vatican City is the spiritual aspect of this world triumvirate. The City of London is the financial aspect. And the City of New Columbia, the City of Columbia, is the war machine. That's what the District of Columbia is. It's the war arm for the Vatican. Over. So, man, did I get off topic. 1871, the Organic Act. Article 1, clause, or section 8, clause 17. What does it say? I thought I had my Constitution around here. But it says that the legislature shall have the complete authority over such district not exceeding 10 miles square. There you are. This is what the legislature has complete authority over. Complete. Well, remember, the Constitution's gone, the federal government's gone. It's gone. But they're pretending. Here's what we think is a government currently. We have, let's say, here's the legislature. What is the legislature actually? The legislature is actually, this is a private, for-profit, municipal corporation.
You want me to read that, please?
Yeah, read aloud.
Because it's really scary. Now that I see it. To exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district, not exceeding 10 miles square, as may, by session of particular states and the acceptance of Congress, become the seat of the government of the United States, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state in which the same shall be, for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings.
So they have 100% authority over such district not exceeding 10 miles square. Complete. Now, think of this. Before I go any further, is this municipal corporation, is it on the same side of the fence as the government used to be? No, it's not. In fact, this is a private, this side over here, we're going to call it government. This side over here, we're going to call business. There's a giant difference, folks. Giant difference. Over here is Walmart, McDonald's, the United States. This, United States, is a private for-profit corporation. It was established in 1871. This here, this 10 mile square, is a legislative democracy. Don't they say every time you hear anything out of their mouth that they are spreading democracy around the world? They are.
Kurt, do you mind if I just ask you a question about that?
Yep.
So Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, that was written at the beginning of the Constitution in 1789.
Yeah, it was part of the original Constitution.
Right. So you would be saying that what had happened was in 1871, they're still using that somehow to incorporate this. I mean, I don't understand that the connection, because if it predates 1871, then it was already part of the Constitution, right?
The original Constitution,
Right.
which is this.
So it was already part of the Constitution, so didn't they have that power already?
Yeah, but they did it before. Remember, like 1802, they established Washington, D.C.
Right.
So they had an Organic Act of 1802, I believe, and they established the District of Columbia. And it was called an Organic Act. What does organic mean? Original. The original act. Can you have two original acts? No. See, when they had another organic act, they established a new private municipal corporation.
So it was a different new.
Yes, it is. It's another organic act. See, most people miss that. I mean, it's such a nuance. It's so slight that people go, no. You know, they established that. I mean, they've done that before. You can't have two organic acts. And they even called the one of 1802 organic. It established the first seat of the government. And that organic act applied to this Constitution, this situation. It doesn't apply. This thing disappeared. They had to reestablish with something to give semblance of the seat of the government. So they have a new organic act establishing a legislative democracy. And so that's the difference. Government's gone. They created this. It's outside the scope. And now it starts to make a lot of sense. So this group of legislatures, the Senate and the representatives, they're really what? A board of directors. And that's what they act like. This is a private municipal corporation, and they are running it as a business it is. It's a business. It's on this side of the line. And this is where it starts to make sense. I'll do that over here. So let's just think of this as the first branch of their government. Here's the executive. Okay, let me clarify how come somebody like a Barrio Sotoro or whatever, Obama can hold office. Why? Everybody, all these people are out there screaming and hollering about a man that's born in Kenya, a British subject. How can he hold office? Well, he holds office because could he be the president of Walmart?
No, he ain't smart enough. You have to make a profit. You have to show a profit.
My question. He could be the president and CEO of Walmart, could he not?
Theoretically.
It doesn't matter where he's from to hold on. About McDonald's. I mean, could he be the president of McDonald's? Doesn't matter what country he's born in. See, that's the thing. Is he is the executive. He's the president and CEO of a private municipal corporation. The Constitution has nothing to do with Mr. Sotoro. You don't have to be constitutionally qualified to be president of McDonald's. You don't have to be constitutionally qualified to be president of this private municipal corporation either. So all you folks that are chasing this birth certificate garbage, you need to stop. It's a waste of your...
seed on them. That still put seed on them and detract from their plan.
No, because here, let me tell you why. Because everybody wasting their life chasing the birth certificate, they're actually helping the New World Order. They're helping to herald it in. Why? Because that's what they want. They want people to be focusing on something because when they are ready to throw Obama under the bus, see, we need to actually remove their authority by noticing something way in advance. Just say, you know what? This is why he's in office, because he's not, there is no government. There is no country. We need to recognize that and then start moving in the right direction. That's why I'm saying they're going to use Sotoro, and when he's done being used, they'll throw him under the bus, and if we don't recognize this situation, who cares? I don't care who's president of Walmart. I don't care who's president of McDonald's. I don't care who's president of the District of Columbia. It has nothing to do with law. It has nothing to do with the government. We need to stop. And this is the best part. I love this part. Not really. Here's the third branch of government. The Department of Justice, the DOJ. It looks like three branches of government, doesn't it? It comes underneath the executive branch, and there's this. Here it is. Here's 1, 2, and 3. The difference is this system of law, this legal system, comes out from underneath the dictator himself.
Is DOJ, does that include the Supreme Court in this model?
Yes, it does.
But over there, it was separate and it had a right to veto the president, but now it's just a form.
Yes, because this judiciary truly was the Supreme Court and was the law of the land. Actually, that's not true either, because Article 6 states that the treaties are truly the law of the land, not the Constitution. The treaties are. Why? Because they need to leave the treaties in there so they can do what? They can have what happened in 1783, the promises back to the King of France. They need to have those treaties to rule this, because the Constitution, if you look up in your Black's Law, what is it to be a constitutor made? To take on the debt of another. See, the Constitution was a crappy document from the beginning. It made all the minions, all the masses, the debtors for what happened in the Revolutionary War. That's what the people were doing. They were actually strapping. They went in, when they created America, the people, the elite, came in and they did all kinds of great things, but they were the ones that they stood to benefit. And they didn't want the debt from the war. What did they do? They wrote a constitution. Actually, they didn't write it. They only witnessed it. There is no signers, by the way, of the Constitution. Let's be clear about that. Only witnesses. That's kind of an odd thought, isn't it? How come nobody signed it? Huh. Anyway, different day. So my point is, I don't know what
They
I'm
wrote
about
the
to say.
Constitution, then you said they were witnesses.
Right.
Who set the Constitution up then?
I don't know.
We don't know that. We don't know.
No, I don't know that anybody knows.
Really?
Yeah, because there were no signers. There were only witnesses. The Constitution, everything, by the way, everything is hearsay at this point.
Right. I thought in history it was Jefferson and somebody else.
That'd be a nice story.
Is that what all that is? Just a story?
I think so.
So it came from some dark abyss and saddled us ever since.
City of London. Yeah, they probably wrote it wrong.
And again, I don't know. I know just enough to be dangerous, but I'm not going to go there today because I'm trying to stay on track for Bruce. Does everybody get this? The Attorney General, I spoke of this earlier. So imagine the top dog, the Attorney General, is acting as the top Attorney General for all the Attorney Generals. And who does he interface with? The Crown. See, so nothing is as it seems.
One more quick thing. What was this thing about the 10 square miles? What was the significance of 10 square miles? It sounded like they were confined to all their shenanigans in that 10 square
God,
miles.
I love you. Here's why. Because you're about to see how it happens. How can they possibly get us if we're not there? Just remember, I said earlier, the 14th Amendment says all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. Persons. Okay, here we go. Does everybody have this? Because now I'm going to go into the 14th Amendment and how it all fits together. I'm going to answer your question right now. I'm going to try to draw Illinois not like I did last week. I'm going to draw Illinois over here on this side where it would be a union state, the 21st union state. Here's Illinois as the here's the Union of States. Illinois didn't exist at the time because it didn't exist until 1818. And that's in Kaskaskia, that was the seat of the government in Illinois at the time. So okay. I don't know.
Close enough.
Not bad.
So here's
Where's
us. This is Illinois, the 21st Union State. And here's how it affects you. First, let me do this. The legislature has complete authority to write all policy, everything, for such district not exceeding 10 miles square. Policy, here it is, public policy. Just like in Rome, public policy. Is public policy law?
No.
No. What does it affect? Where is it in force?
It's administrative.
It's administrative. And what does it affect?
Corporation.
But the public policy that this legislature, this board of directors writes, only applies to here, the District of Columbia. That's it. It cannot reach beyond the 10 mile square. That's what's so interesting about this. Is the Patriot Act law?
No.
Is it constitutional?
No.
Does it have to be constitutional?
No.
No. So here it is. The Patriot Act is here. A public policy written by this board of directors. It only applies to the 10 mile square. How about the health care bill? Is it law?
Yeah.
No.
Under their system it is.
No.
No.
It's policy and it's only statutory. It's not law. So who does it affect? Here's health care bill. Who does it affect? It only affects the citizens of the District of Columbia. How about the food bill, S510? Is that law?
Nope.
No. Who does it affect? It's policy. It only affects the 10-mile square. S510. How in the world does this 10-mile square and all the public policy that's written for that, how does it get to us? It doesn't. We get to it. So here you are, sitting in a chair in Rockford, Illinois, and then what do? By either silence or participation, you become a United States citizen. And you place yourself as a resident within the federal territory known as the District of Columbia. So you are all persons, claim personhood status. The person now is subject to the jurisdiction of this corporate state called the District of Columbia. So now you know that when you think you're sitting in Illinois, you have already made contract to participate in their private system.
Oh,
Because you're claiming U.S. citizenship. That's what I'm going to go into now. The United States citizen, you used to be a protected 10th Amendment protected citizen of Illinois, but then you claimed U.S. citizenship. In fact, are you a registered voter?
oh yeah.
Bummer. Because when you register to vote, I'll do that real quick, because all of it is part of the 14th Amendment. Does everybody understand how you attach yourself to this private municipal corporation? By the way, in the Organic Act, it actually says, in their words, that this private municipal corporation shall have all the power of the Constitution. Or it says all the power not inconsistent with the Constitution and laws of the United States. What does not inconsistent mean? It means consistent with. So they have this private corporate charter. I'm holding it in my hands. This is the private corporate charter for the 1871 business that was created. What does it look like it says there? The Constitution of the United States. This is their private corporate charter. It looks very similar to the Constitution that used to be over here. But that Constitution disappeared.
I'm getting it, I really am.
I can tell.
But when you said there, is the ambiguous they. Who the hell are they?
Those corporate officers.
That's
But how do they perpetuate these interests? There's got to be an overriding entity that
who do they work for?
I really
The
don't
Crown.
know. Well, that's again the bank over there.
No, it's not. And that's what people need to understand is that you don't understand when we say the word bank, we always picture Alpine Bank down the street or some little local. No, this is something so insidious, so
City
horrible.
of London, I'm thinking no.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that'd be right. But these guys that's how they take over entire economies. By putting somebody in debt, enslaving an entire population, and then pull the rug out from under them. They're doing it right now, and they're doing a heck of a good job. The bank, the City of London, is doing it. It's the Rothschilds. It's the Khazars. It's all these folks that have been tied into this crap. It's the Jesuits. It's the Vatican, ultimately. That's who's doing it. But we don't see it that way because we don't want to believe what we're witness to it, and we don't want to believe it. So but you see how this lays out so easily. Take off your government goggles, put on your business goggles. Everything that's happening is for money. It's for profit. This will get really crazy. So here we go. You're sitting here thinking you're here. You're thinking that the 10th Amendment's going to protect you. But you've claimed citizenship to a private, for-profit municipal corporation. Person. What is a person but a fictional corporation? Is the Rockford Police, are they a corporation?
Yeah.
Doesn't it say all persons born or naturalized? The Rockford Police are a person subject to the jurisdiction of this private entity. There is not a business or corporation out there that is not subject to this. You realize that if the company you work for doesn't collect your taxes, guess who's going to get in trouble? You? No. The company you work for, because they're a person subject to this jurisdiction. And they're going to close down that company if they don't steal the money from your paycheck before you get it. That's what a person is. A person is a fictional entity. It is also a U.S. citizen. Does everybody understand how you put yourself in here? The only way to get out of this is to cut the tie. You've got to not be a U.S. citizen. The thing is this stuff is so important. Do you realize if only 10% of America knew this, would they be participating? No. 10% of 300 million? Oh my gosh. You know, that's a pretty good number. So here's what happens. This is how it works. Here's the Founding Fathers' Republican form of government. Okay? That's where the unalienable rights are given by God. This is where freedom is. Okay? This is one system. This is the system that the Founding Fathers created. Here is another system. This is called the United States. You see they're separate, by the way, for a reason. Here's what happens. In this system, which is private, by the way, it's private. They call it public. Don't mix it up. Because they call it public because you need to look up the word public. But understand it's private. In their system are the Democrats, the Republicans, the Ron Pauls, all what appears to be politics. All politics. What appear to be politics. All politics. This is the legislative democracy. Now here's what's sickening. What system were we supposed to be living under? This one. Remember in 1870, 1870. What happened in 1870? The 15th Amendment. The right to vote. This is voters' registration. What's the first box at the top of that sheet that you check?
Are you a citizen?
Of the United States. What does the Declaration of Independence say? It says that governments are instituted by the consent of the governed. So we're the governed. We're sitting out here, living under here. But in 1870, after this reconstruction of the United States of America, what happens? They now say that you need to register to vote. No, you don't. But you think you do. You have to register to vote for what system? Their system. Did you need to register prior to this? No. Is this a privilege or is it a right? It's a privilege. They keep telling you that and you keep believing it. And it is. Is it a privilege you want? Not really. So here goes. The Declaration says governments are instituted by the consent. So this is consent. And we institute this. We do. And we allow it. We want it. We like what we got right now, don't we? That's this system, folks. Consent. Now here's what's funny. When we talk about this two-party system, it's really not a two-party system. It's not a Tea Party. It's nothing. It's all of that stuff is in this private system. There is no two teams. It's not the Bears and the Packers. It's the same team, sometimes playing offense, sometimes it's a scrimmage. They're playing each other, off each other, to get as far ahead as they possibly get. And we're sitting out in the stands in the Coliseum, cheering for them. I would say that they're much smarter than we are. So, what did I say earlier? Power of attorney. When we register, we registrate, we hand over the rights, we hand over title, legal title, to our power of attorney. So now they get to speak for us by proxy. We don't have any rights. We actually gave it to them. And it doesn't even matter who wins. And then what do? They run up and down the field and And they steal money from us. They steal property from us. And guess what else they do? They get rich because they sold their souls. And who loses? All of us that trust them. So by proxy, we lose everything. And it's by our consent that it's happening. What do we need to do? We need to not only unregister, but we need to withdraw our consent. What does the Declaration say? Governments are instituted by our consent. The moment you undo this, whether they recognize it or not, everything I've ever read says it's all about consent. Biblically and everything else. The moment you get out of this system, you fall over here. Is there anything over here? No. Is there any governments over here? No. Why? Because everybody thinks this is what they should be doing. So there is no government. So you're sitting out here by yourself, and that's where I'm at. That's where my wife's at. That's where half a dozen of us in here are at. We're by ourselves. Because we refuse to participate in this system. Because I know for a fact that when you register to vote, that is the last vote you ever cast in your life. It's the vote for the system. Because after that, everything is irrelevant. Now, here's some interesting 14th Amendment facts. I'm actually talking about the 14th Amendment. I just didn't say it. How many people in here know